If you want to get early access to all of our daily videos, please consider joining our Patreon. I'll put a link below. Here it is on the screen. Again, you get early access to all the daily videos, ad-free, early, before anyone else gets to see them. Have at it. And you can help support the channel. What is psionics exactly? It seems like everyone has a different definition of what this term means. Let me know in the comments what you think it means. But in this video, we are going to let UFO whistleblower Jake Barber from the Skywatcher team explain to us what exactly is psionics. You see, there was a live Zoom event held over the weekend called the Psionic Summit or something along those lines, where he was supposed to speak live and take viewer questions. Turns out he couldn't show up live, but was able to send in a sort of a pre-recorded interview. Now, let's find out exactly why he couldn't show up live.
To Jake Barber, who I was hoping would be live with us today, but only a few days ago he told Ross and I, and it was Ross that set up the arrangement with Jake, that he's been called out into the desert. And so we quickly put together an interview. So Georg will play the interview. And I asked him the same question I've asked Ross and all of you. What to him is psionics?
All right, so he got called out to the desert. Not sure what that means. Was he Moses? I'm sure maybe there's other details there. The person speaking there is Jim Garrison. Maybe he's describing it in a way that, Jake had said it differently. But for whatever reason, he's called out to do something and can't show up to this event. But again, he did at least do a pre-recorded interview. But I know a lot of people were disappointed they didn't get to talk with them live and ask them direct questions and that sort of thing. I myself had signed up for the summit, but couldn't make it. And so I want to give a shout out to Red Panda Koala for, making these clips. I'll put a link in the description so you can go find them. Now, let's get to what Jake Barber, right, this person who came out in January as a whistleblower, and really brought this term psionic into the forefront of the UFO conversation. But again, so many people are confused on what that term means exactly because it's used intermittently and very loosely by a lot of people. So let's hear Jake's version of what psionics means.
To explain in your own way what you mean by psionics.
For sure. Yeah, psionics, it's kind of a fun word. What do I mean by psionics? Well, I can share what my understanding of it is. Psionics, I think, let me back up and say that, I didn't get into this world of psionics or consciousness, through the front door, let's say. It wasn't something I was pursuing or that I had a background in educationally. I came in through a window, if you follow me with that analogy. And so I took an interest in it because of my own experience that happened at a very unexpected time in my life. But since then is when I've really began to explore what that really does mean. And I'm excited to share that with others. And my message is one of invitation, not education. I'm not here to insist or sell people on the idea they should take my interpretation of my experiences and my subsequent education through the pursuit of knowledge of and personal understanding of what it means. But I want to invite everyone to get out there and play with this thing, because what's beautiful is that it's available to everyone. And one of the analogies that's helped me look at this is the idea of the World Wide Web. Like, if you think of consciousness as the World Wide Web, and the degree to which we can play within that field of consciousness is something like psionics, then I think you're on a good track. And it might not, I've thought about this recently, it might not even be an analogy. It might like literally be a form of digital intelligence or digital consciousness that the World Wide Web might be evolving into. That's yet to be determined.
This sounds like my digital aliens theory, y'all. If you're familiar with the channel and that theory that I've thrown out, I'll put a link in the description. You can check it out if you want. But this sounds very much like my theory about digital aliens. But regardless, this is an interesting thought, right? An invitation to try this. And again, I always put as a warning to this sort of thing, right? This idea of connecting telepathically, consciously. There's no conversation about safety, right? There's no conversation about what protocols are put in place to keep your mental state safe, instead of just opening yourself up to extraterrestrials mentally, right? There's no protocols for safety. It's never once brought up. It's never once mentioned. It's never, ever how people could be protected to go try something like this. It's like, yeah, come on out, talk to aliens. Wait a second, how do I protect myself? How do I know that's not going to invite something in my life for the rest of my life that I'm not prepared for? Right? There's no regard for any of that in this, and I think that's an issue, and I hope that's something that these guys look into, right? Trying to protect people who are going to give this a go. Because if it was true, you would have to have those safety protocols. Now, if you didn't know if it was true and you're just thinking it is, then I can understand why you don't have it, because nothing's really happening, so there's nothing to protect you against, right? But if it is true, then there should be safety protocols in place, and there aren't any. So that's kind of a big red flag to me that doesn't exist. It's more like, we don't know if it's real, but something's happening, so do you want to join us? And that's a much different approach than what's being said, because they are 100% giving confirmation that they telepathically communicate with aliens, right? So they're confirming that to be true, 100% true. Not a little bit true, not maybe. That is what's happening. But they can't tell you who the aliens are, what species, where they come from, anything. And then they want to invite you to also just start communicating with these beings that you have no idea about, right? Without any regard for safety. So I hope that becomes part of the conversation.
But, why is this hard to understand, or why is it abstract for people? Again, this is where I think analogies are helpful. So if you think of a field of consciousness like the internet, it's around us all the time. It's full of information. It's a two-way thing. People contribute. You can upload to it. You could download from it. But you can't see it. Like, I couldn't point to it here in this room. And so our ability to connect to that World Wide Web is done through something like a Wi-Fi connection. And I think some of the challenges, even with the practical applications of that, are rooted in our own ego. You could think of our ego like a smartphone. Let's say you have the latest version of the Apple smartphone, and you're like, this is the smartest phone there is. It's got all these widgets on it. It's got this much gigabyte. It's got this fancy of a camera. But for some reason, you're still not able to use it to tap into the field of consciousness. Well, I would say that that's because you're in airplane mode. And so people need to learn how to activate the Wi-Fi on their cell phone to tap into this field of consciousness. It also helps for me to think about, the difference between our intelligence, our knowledge, our wisdom, and then our intuition. So intuition is a word that we find ourselves using a lot when we talk about consciousness. And why I think that is because intuition is a little bit different than the first three. Someone with good intuition, or a high level of knowledge, or a high level of intelligence, or a high level of wisdom, you would probably in general say, hey, those are smart people. Like, what makes people smart? Like the smartphone. And I think it's important to kind of differentiate between those four. And this is what I have done that has helped me out a lot. When you think of knowledge, let's just say, is like rote information. You have the ability to retain and share knowledge. Like, you could go on Jeopardy and clear all the categories on Jeopardy. That's rote knowledge. But the practical application of that knowledge is something different. So that moves us more into like, well, you're smart, but you're not very intelligent. Is that possible? Perhaps, because I look at intelligence more as like a set of problem solving skills. You can solve problems. And then the other category over here, wisdom. Well, what is wisdom and how is that different than knowledge and intelligence? Well, wisdom to me seems to be something like the ability to make good decisions, fruitful decisions. And then lastly, well, intuition. How would you differentiate intuition? And intuition is something like being able to make the right decision at the right time. And it's something like this internal bell. It's how I think of it, that can ring true inside of your being. And when something rings true, there's really no explanation as to why you're attracted or oriented to it, but it's leading you a certain way. And so I feel every human has this bell that can ring true inside of them, and that's your intuition, and it can drive decision making. So, to pull this back to, what is psionics? I think psionics is our ability to play within the consciousness field for desired outcomes, rather than just connect to it.
All right, so Jake is explaining what he thinks of, intelligence, being smart, intuition, right? These things, and the term psionics, right? And what I'm hearing is, and nothing he's saying sounds crazy or anything. I mean, it all sounds pretty reasonable, to be honest with you. But one thing I'm noticing is that Jake is basically just giving his interpretation of these words, right? And what they mean. And that's really the issue here, is that there is no defined terminology that we're all sticking with, right? Everyone's kind of defining things themselves and then using that language to promote something or sell you on something, or, right, explain something to you. But really, it's all just self-defined, right? There's the Jake Barber dictionary, and we all have our own dictionary. We all do this, right? So I'm not singling him out. This is kind of a human thing, but this is where the issue is, right? This is why science needs to be involved, right? To eliminate these sort of human errors, right? Because this is the issue. No one really knows what these terms mean, right? What psionic means. He's given his interpretation of it, yet using that word, right, out and about, and everyone is, but nobody really knows what's going on, what that means exactly. So it's hard to be like, yeah, I believe in psionics, but what do you mean? What does the term mean? What exactly are you saying you believe in, right? Because his definition is not universally accepted, because everyone's got their own interpretation, right? And this happens a lot in the UFO community. People use their own interpretation of whistleblower, disclosure, UAP, the phenomenon, right? Now psionics, intuition, intelligence, being smart, right? All these things, wisdom, it's all self-interpreted, which is fine, but definitely becomes an issue.
So again, to stick with this analogy, the World Wide Web, imagine, okay, you figured this out, you've connected to the field of consciousness, and I'll talk about how, crudely, how I understand to do that and what's been successful for me so that other people can try this on their own. But imagine you're connected and you get a Google search bar. You have to put something in that search bar. You're connected, but you have to have some intention. And intention is a really important thing, because without intention, you have no driving force. And if we consider that maybe every living thing in the universe has access to this consciousness field, you need to bring intention in order to find what you're looking for. So you have to populate that search bar with something. And so bringing some good intentions, what you consider good, which at the most fundamental level, without getting, to angels and demons on you, is just to go there with the intent that it's going to be worthwhile and you're going to find something that is worthwhile to you. And I think finding that space is really important if you're going to try and connect to the field of consciousness. There's several ways to do it. I mean, meditation comes up a lot in conversation. You can meditate. And for me, it's like, well, what does meditation look like? How do we find our own consciousness? How do we separate from our observer point of view inside our own head when thoughts are coming in, where they're coming from? Is this coming from Is this my intellect? Is this my knowledge system? Is this my wisdom? Is this something that's inside my head that can be tracked? Or is this something that's coming from an external source? And this is where I find meditation is so valuable, because meditation could be thought of as something like creating a defensible space in your mind that is like blacked out, where you are quieting, or you're at least starting by observing your own thoughts and then trying to source the origin of those thoughts. Because we all have thoughts, you know. Some of the most easy sources to identify are things that are consistent with our instincts. Like, am I thinking about food? Well, I'm hungry. Am I thinking about food, survival? Am I thinking about procreation, defending myself? Those are all thoughts that will probably populate our head, you know, from the limbic portion of our brain. Then we have other thoughts, which are like intelligent thoughts, are these things we have learned that fascinate us, that puzzles we like solving. That's our intelligence at play, and we can source those. But when you get really good at creating this defensible space and being able to identify thoughts and push away thoughts that you can identify as coming from some internal origin, what gets really interesting is that you'll begin to have thoughts or ideas that you can't source the outcome from. And I believe those are coming from through a conduit of intuition. And when you're applying that intuition, that connection, I think you're in the purest form of Wi-Fi connection to the consciousness field, which is where exciting things start to happen. If any of that makes sense.
Not really, but I get what you're trying to say, Jake. Okay. I guess it's not that it doesn't make sense. It's that does it make sense that we all accept it? Because maybe it makes sense to me, but if it doesn't make sense, right? Like, we need some sort of universal truth here about this, I think, more than anything. And it sounds like Jake is not even entirely sure of this psionic, you know, term, right? And the idea behind it, right? Because you should be able to explain it on a paper napkin in one sentence with very few words, right? Any idea should be easily, right, explained. And the idea that this can't, at least the fundamental basics of it can't be explained easily is interesting to me, because I don't think really anybody knows what's going on. Now, does that sort of play into, you know, the truth of it? Meaning, just because we don't understand it, Patrick, doesn't mean it's not true. I get that. But if we're going to move forward with this topic and the term psionic, I think we need to have some sort of universal understanding of what exactly that means, because then we can understand the claims that people are making, right? Because later they can come back and say, I wasn't saying I could do that. You misunderstood the term psionic. I was just claiming we could do X, Y, Z, but you thought we could do A, B, C, right? And that's the problem, right? Because again, it's not like Jake and his team are just sitting back doing their own thing. They're out promoting something and wanting to get people involved and inviting people in, right? And they want funding. They want proof. They're claiming to be able to bring disclosure to the global masses, you know, with these claims, but not even really truly understanding what psionics is. And hey, maybe I'm the idiot. Maybe I'm not getting it, right? That's totally possible, and I totally accept that. Again, I don't know anything, right? So, but this is all interesting for sure. And let me be clear, I'm open-minded. If there is some sort of, again, I have my digital aliens theory, right? Like, I'm clearly open-minded. I can be open-minded and not believe, right? Open-minded just means you're willing to hear the ideas. Doesn't mean necessarily you need to cross the line into believing them. And not everything needs to be believed or not believed. We can live in the land of I don't know. And that's where I sit with psionics. I don't know. I'm not saying it's not true, but I'm not saying it's true either, right? You have people claiming to do something, right? But I don't know what that something is entirely. And it's a little confusing, if I'm being honest, right? And maybe because it is such a new concept, that is what makes it confusing. It's not something we've ever encountered before, so it's kind of hard to wrap our minds around. I get that aspect too. Okay, I do. I understand that. But I would just push back on a few things Jake said, like intuition and go there, knowing something worthwhile. Like how do we determine intuition and what someone, or intention, sorry, not intuition, intention, right? Someone's intention. How do aliens interpret intention, right? Because they won't communicate with you unless you have good intention. Like, what does that even mean? What does good and evil mean? These are concepts we created, right? Good and evil. Show me good and evil in the animal kingdom, in the plant kingdom. Show me good and evil, right? Take away all humans on Earth. Show me good and evil on the planet. What does that mean? Right. So the idea that aliens, well, he doesn't have a good intention or bad. I mean, how do they know? What do they know? What's going on? I don't know if that's anything definable. For me, psionics, when I hear the term, what I think, based on what people's claims are and what they're doing, is the ability to telepathically communicate with aliens. That's what I think of psionics. Now, it could be more of a base thought of just tapping into a consciousness that exists in life, just in the world. There's a consciousness energy that you can tap into. I guess that could be another definition. I don't know. But, I don't know. I'm still confused. After hearing all this, I'm still confused. And maybe I'm looking too deeply for the answers. I don't know. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, I'm open-minded to all of this being true, because this is exciting. These are like superpowers to me. This is like super exciting. But me personally, for me to cross the finish line into this is real, I need certain things established for myself. And again, this is just for me. You think however you want, right? But for me, I need some sort of safety protocols put in place to ensure that me opening up my mind like this to other beings that I have no idea about, right? I'm protected, right? And what exactly the claims are being made about psionics, right? And again, if anyone can learn to do this, why are there these secret black programs where we're kidnapping people across the globe and hooking them up to machines and drugs to do it if it can be done so simply? And it's just, you just got to get off airplane mode, right? Again, something's not adding up here, and I'm just not sure what it is. It doesn't mean psionic abilities aren't true, but maybe some of the stories that people are connecting to that aren't true. But the idea of, psionics, okay, I get it. There's could be something there, right? That are, we don't understand our mind entirely, and we don't understand consciousness entirely, and we don't really even understand what makes us alive and sentient. I get it. I'm with you. We don't understand it. There's a whole door, and I'm super curious and open-minded and want to find out. And I have nothing against people pursuing avenues to sort of help explain that to the public, right? So at the end of the day, I do support what Jake and his team are trying to do. At the end of the day, right? Go for it. I'm here. I will be there waiting, right? With arms wide open, right? Just ready to take it all in. Absolutely. Oh, you got a craft, you telepathically communicated, and now you're down to craft. Now you got a UFO to show us, or some just extraordinary evidence of these claims, right? Which I hope is coming soon. I mean, clock is ticking. We were told in January within 12 months, and so clock is ticking. But yeah, I'm open to it all. We'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, then that's the realm of remote viewing, remote perception, for example, that with intent, one can see objects hidden, under a pillow in another room or on the other side of the world. So this is very important, because you're identifying psionics as the relationship between us and this larger field of consciousness, and our ability to align with it and enter it and go places and interact with beings like extraterrestrials, NHI, that communicate through mental telepathy, and they're fluent in the language of consciousness.
They are.
And we have to become fluent in the language of consciousness in order to engage in intelligible communication.
Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We'll see you guys in the next video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace, vetters.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.